Yeah. Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting for Monday, the 8th of March, 2021. This evening we have a public forum prior to the commencement of the council meeting, and I must advise all speakers that they must be courteous and that they have 5 minutes during which to state their case. The meeting is being held in accordance with this section 4 of the Code of Meeting Practice for council staff and delegates. And we are very mindful of the timelines in relation to your issues. So once you finish your 5-minute presentation, there'll be a provision for councillors to ask questions. So that will also occur. So thanks again for coming this evening. More importantly, council policy does really require people to be seated in the gallery, and also the displaying of the flag is fine. We've got one on the centre table. I'm happy to allow that, but we can't continue until you actually sit down. This part of the proceeding is not being recorded, so I understand your passion. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'd rather you either sit or you probably be outside the chamber, because
I'm not inside the chamber. I'm standing here.
That's good.
I'm peacefully just standing here.
okay. Righto then. Okay, so our first speaker tonight is Mr. Bobby Wybrow, and he's come in via Zoom. He's speaking in relation to item 9.1, which is the notice of rescission. And the notice of rescission is the protocol for displaying of civic flags, and he does not support this rescission motion. Thanks, Bobby. The chamber is yours, mate.
Thank you very much. Up my words. So I'd like to acknowledge that we are all meeting on Wiradjuri country tonight, and that sovereignty has never been ceded. I'd like to express my deepest respect for my ancestors of this beautiful country, and also to my elders today. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are in attendance at tonight's meeting, and to our deadly allies. My name is Bobby Wybrow. I'm a Wiradjuri man born and raised here on country on Bungam Rawara, or so-called Albury as you all may know it. I join you via Zoom this evening, even though I just live 2 blocks away. I don't feel like Albury City is a very welcoming place for Aboriginal people in light of recent events, nor do I feel that it is a culturally safe space for me. Again, we as Aboriginal people are required to approach a board of non-Aboriginal people to make decisions on our behalf. It's so shameful that in 2021, we need to debate whether we recognise the world's oldest continuous living culture and honour our servicemen and women by flying our flags that represent us. Shame on the 70% of people who voted against flying our flags. And shame on those councillors who feel the need to pander to those colonial, outdated, racist ideologies that we, Aboriginal people, are less than. Quote, after the war, I went back to being just another black fella, end quote. Leonard Waters, the first Aboriginal aviator and pilot to serve in World War II. Oppressed in his own country to fight for the same country that oppressed him, fighting for somebody else's king and queen and the land they took away. Lest we forget, unless you're Aboriginal, get over it. United in war, divided in peace. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have fought for Australia in every war and continued to serve for some 87 years in the armed forces before they were even considered citizens of Australia. Only one Aboriginal man ever received land under the soldier settlement scheme. Returned Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander servicemen and women were often denied the honour and rights given to other returned servicemen and women. For example, many were barred from even entering the RSL except on Anzac Day. Now, Some members of our local RSL seem to think it's a plaque that recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people lets their corporate conscience off the hook. Mr. Doxey says he supports flying the flag, but has also stated that Greeks fought, the Lebanese fought. Where does it all stop? Mr. Doxey, it stops here tonight when our flags are up there approved to fly on that hill. Flags that were proclaimed on the 14th of July 1995 as official flags of Australia. It seems that Albury City and the RSL are behind in times. To quote Victoria's first Aboriginal Senator, Lydia Thorpe, "We are the world's oldest living culture. We aren't just from this country, we are of this country. The way the memorial treats us is indicative of how you view us," end quote. The small plaque at Monument Hill is a tokenistic gesture, and it's simply not good enough when you compare what sacrifices Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have made for so-called Australia. Is flying our flag too much of a reminder that we are still here and that we've survived? Or does it make people feel guilty that we are in fact on stolen land, land for which no treaty exists, and land whose wealth they have pillaged and hoarded? Flying our flags is about recognising the first people of this continent. Flying our flags is also about a visual representation of the oldest continuing living culture on this planet. Adding our flags on that hill takes nothing away from what is already there. Flying our flag adds so much richness and honesty of so many stories that have not been told about the true history of this continent. Yes, you all may be well inundated with emails from all of the Karens and Kens in the community opposing the decision, but you need to ask yourself, are you aligned with the values of the present or the past? Which side of history do you want to be part of?
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for your presentation. Questions, councillors? Any questions? Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bobby, thank you for coming forward and speaking this evening. Has given me the only opportunity that I have to speak on behalf of the veteran community that I represent against this poorly worded motion of additional flags at the Albury War Memorial. But first, allow me to acknowledge the work that you have done in your community with regards to sexual health and in particular STIs, very important. Also the work that you do for the LGBTIQA+ community. My first question to you, have you been up to the War Memorial and read the wording on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander plaque?
Absolutely. I'm there every Anzac Day at the dawn service, and I have seen the writing on the plaque, and I just don't think it's good enough. We, too many times, are given the crumbs and the scraps and are told to deal with it and be grateful for what you're given. And I just see it as very tokenistic. And look, it's a great start, but it's a start of a conversation that needs to happen, that needs to continue to happen.
Thanks, Bobby. Did you know that it was my idea several years ago to speak with Auntie Nancy and your community about the first time a plaque going up to the Albury War Memorial? Did you know that?
I am unaware that you've met with Auntie Nancy, rest in peace. But and as I said, I think that's a wonderful contribution and it's great. It's a great start, but it's not good enough.
This plaque developed into the plaque we see today, and the idea for that plaque to be the first plaque in the order of plaques at the War Memorial was my idea. My idea. Did you know also that the idea of the Aboriginal community asked me about the Australian flag on their plaque? Did you know that? They wanted it at the top of the plaque and in the centre between the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags.
I'm not aware of that conversation, of the consultation that you've had with certain members of the community. And I don't deny the fact that some Aboriginal people identify as both Australian, Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander.
Thank you. Your comment in the paper that it was tokenism is unfounded and shows no respect and only serves to dishonour the other plaques that are up there representing all the wars that all Australians have fought in. Your point on that one?
Thank you for your comment. And I think, you know, it is tokenism, and until it's followed through with our flags and true representation, it will continue to be tokenism.
Bobby, did you know that when I was serving in Vietnam alongside of Aboriginal soldiers in my platoon, that in May 1967, I voted in the national referendum that gave Aboriginal people the right to vote. So therefore, those that have left messages on my RSL answering machine without a name or a telephone number that call me a racist or a bigot are cowards.
Thank you. I don't know why that question is being directed towards me. I don't speak for all Aboriginal people. I've never called you racist. I have suggested that the plaque on top of that hill is tokenistic.
Have you visited the Aboriginal garden on Western Hill and the disgraceful condition that is in?
I'm not here to speak about the Western Hill. I'm here to speak about the flags that are not flying up there on that hill representing my people.
Yeah, I'm only suggesting that maybe your interest should be on the garden for a start. What would be your comment if the council decided to fly the Chinese, the British, the Irish flags?
I'm done with this.
I think you obviously weren't listening to my speech when I said that the Australian government have proclaimed the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flag as official flags of this country. The flags of the Chinese or any other nationality who served in any of the wars that this country have participated in, it doesn't matter. We are here as the first people of this continent. We need to be represented. And I think that rhetoric is just in really poor form.
I think you better confine the questions to the issue on the agenda, Councillor Doxey, because I think it is going a little bit too far with some of the expectations you have of the speaker. Is there anything else you want to ask the speaker about the content of his?
No, I'm prepared to be closed down. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for your presentation and your honest responses. Thanks, mate. Okay, our second speaker is Mr. Rod Halstead, not speaking in relation to 9.1, notice of rescission, Albury City Protocol for display of civic flags. He does not support the original council resolution, so supports the rescission. Thank you, Mr. Halstead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to say that I also acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the owners of this land. Mr. Mayor, councillors, is this mic on? Yep, thank you. Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this issue regarding the flying of flags at the Albury War Memorial. My name's Rod Halstead. I speak on behalf of my deceased father, Howard Halstead, who saw active service in the Royal Australian Navy in the Pacific during World War II. My uncle Roger Halstead, after whom I'm named, and who paid the ultimate price at 21 years of age, serving in the RAAF in Europe in the same conflict as my dad. On behalf of the families of those who served in all wars protecting Australia, particularly those who didn't return, on behalf of those who currently serve, one of whom is my nephew, and on behalf of the over 50 local ratepayers and residents of Albury, of whom I asked this following question: should the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island flags be flown at the Albury War Memorial? Without exception, all replied no. That's also my view. The national flag represents all residents of Australia, including Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders. To fly any other flag separates those that particular flag represents from the rest of their fellow Australians. It keeps them apart rather than making them a part of. One of the people I spoke with, the local business owner, pointed out that more Australians derive from Greek heritage than any other nationality. Should we fly the Greek flag? Or, as my friend suggested, the Italian flag, as that is her background? A final point, Parliamentary protocol demands the state flag be flown before the Aboriginal or Torres Strait flags. Will you seek funding for a third flagpole? Perhaps the money would be better spent upgrading the bowl. This idea to fly any flag other than the Australian national flag ultimately is divisive and most certainly goes against the wishes of the vast majority of Albury residents. Consultation with the RSL should happen as a matter of course. All that said, the contribution of Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders in both world wars fought under the Australian flag should be widely acknowledged. They fought with honour and were rewarded with deplorable treatment when they returned home. That must be accepted and rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halstead. Questions? Councillor Cameron.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Halstead, if I could ask you as respectfully as possible, what do you understand is the effect of this rescission motion tonight if it's carried?
I'm just against the flying of the flags, mate.
Okay, well,
I don't understand the rescission motion.
Let me explain the rescission motion to you, because the rescission motion is not about whether we fly the flags or not ultimately at the monument.
Yep.
The rescission motion only seeks to
It's whether
restore
the
the original
RSL is
consulted like any other
consulted.
stakeholder.
I
in the
understand
community.
that.
Okay, I myself support the flying of the flag at the,
Yep,
at the
I'm aware of
monument,
that
and I
too.
believe it will be flown one day. What I don't support is taking steps to do it before we consult with the RSL.
I agree with that too.
I think there was a typographical error on our business paper also. It indicated you were speaking against the rescission motion.
Well, I am,
Fair enough. All right. Can I ask you one final question, if I could?
certainly.
What's your understanding of what flag Aboriginal and other servicemen fought under in World War I and World War II?
I understand they fought under the Australian flag.
They fought under the Union
The
Jack.
Aboriginal flag, as I understand it, wasn't designed or made until the 60s.
Well,
Please. Questions confined to the chamber and the councillor and the
I
presenter.
stand to be
Thanks.
corrected, but it's my understanding, and I was in the army for a short period, that in World War II, in World War I, in the Boer War, of course, and in Korea and in Malaya, Australian troops served as part of Commonwealth forces and fought under the Union Jack. Occasionally they flew the red ensign, but it was never officially a flag. In Vietnam, they started to use the blue ensign, which we know as our flag today. But it's a misunderstood point, I think, to say that they fought under the Australian flag. They certainly fought under the Union Jack.
I accept that, but my point is this. We should all be standing under one flag. If we want to unify this country, we stand under one flag, and that's the Australian national flag.
Well, with the greatest respect, and I do respect you and I respect your opinion, I think we've got room for a few flags, but we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody
Councillor
else?
Glaken.
Yes, can I ask the speaker through you, please? You referred to a group of retirees or 50 plus or something.
I
Can you-
didn't say retirees.
a group of 50
I
plus.
said
a
I've
group-
spoken to 50 people in Albury
Okay, 50.
of all
Sorry,
different
I do
ages and different
apologise.
sexes.
Yeah, I thought you were indicating you had spoken to a certain group.
No, no.
Okay.
No, I just stopped people in the street and asked them what they thought.
So you did a straw poll on 50.
Sorry?
Thank you.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Halstead. Thanks for your presentation. Okay. All right, we'll start with the council meeting. We all stand for the opening prayer, please. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision-making, protect us and the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen.
Amen.
I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today. Pay my respects to the elders past, present, future, for they hold the memories, the culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I must advise you that this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations received by the chair. I have received two from Councillor Graham Doxey. The first, nature of conflict is non-pecuniary, less than significant. Description is I am the president of the City of Albury RSL sub-branch and have a direct interest in representing my members and the veteran community. The item is 9.1, the notice of rescission. The action is I will leave the chamber during discussions on this motion. The second item is Councillor Doxy, non-pecuniary, less than significant. Again, I'm the president of the City of Albury RSL sub-branch and have a direct interest in this community project progressing. The item number is 13.3, which is the draft World War II Memorial Bowl Master Plan. And the action is I will leave the chamber during discussion on the motion. Mr. Zachnich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This advice relates to disclosure of political donations and the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The Act under Section 10.4 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on the council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993 Section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at the meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contribution plan, but not including the making of an order under 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zachnich. Apologies. Everyone's accounted for. Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute. Action plans. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress, and 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, happy to take the question after we get a seconder. Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Vanderman.
We adopted the minutes?
That's after this one. Did you want to ask your question?
No, I'll save it up.
Okay. Any questions? Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Thurley?
Just briefly, given the subject of the public forum and the rescission motion, it should be noted that in actions in progress, a budget item for $30,000 has been included in the draft 4-year delivery program, and that will be considered for public exhibition on the 1st of May 2021. And this will provide opportunity for further community and stakeholder feedback in relation to the installation of flags. So this, no matter what happens tonight with the rescission motion, this is not a done deal. People still have the opportunity to comment on this issue. So I encourage those who have strong opinions to make submissions about this matter. Next time it comes out on public display, it will be a line item of $30,000 in the budget. So if you want to make a comment, that's where you need to look. And at this stage, it goes on public display on the 1st of May. So keep your eyes peeled.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. No question or debate. I put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Confirmation minutes of previous meeting. Councillor Doxy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the following recommendation. The minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 22 February 2021 at 6:22 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Doxy. I'll take it from Councillor Cameron.
It's not really a question, Mr. Mayor. It probably needs to be done by way of motion, but there's an inaccuracy in the draft minutes. Draft minutes in 17.1 says that council defers consideration of the CEO request for reappointment to a date no later than council meeting 7 June 2021. It should read, the council defers consideration of the CEO request for reappointment to the next meeting. I know because I moved the motion.
Thank you. So what is it you would like me to do?
Well, I'd like to see that amended before we adopt it. Now, I believe I'd have to do that in this circumstance by way of an amendment, which I'll now move.
Okay. We've got a second for that amendment. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any discussion of a question from Councillor Glacken? Is it in relation to this, Councillor Glacken?
No, not this part.
Okay, no worries. Is there any other debate in relation to this amended suggestion? No? Happy to put that. All those in favour of the amendment? Those against, the amendment is carried. Let the minutes reflect that the motion was at the next council meeting. Okay, Councillor Glacken, question.
My question pertains to an item that was dealt with in confidential. I note that when people leave the chamber or arrive in the chamber, that we document the time. Can I ask how is that dealt with for people in the confidential section, noting that we don't actually have the minutes per se, and my understanding is that one of us was not able to attend for the full meeting.
That's in relation to Zoom or more specifically physical
during
attendance?
the confidential meeting, one of us
Yeah.
was not able to participate for the duration, and so I wanted to know how is that dealt with.
How was that reflected in the minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mrs. Acknich, do you have any feedback on that one? Thanks.
Thanks for the question through you, Mr Mayor. Ordinarily, it would be recorded in the minutes, noting we'd have a staff member in the room to discuss that would be participating in that discussion based on their report. So we'd need to we could check the audio in terms of the timing when that occurred and provide that detail in the minutes.
Thank you.
So would that have to be an amendment that's moved to enable that change, Mr. Acknich?
Not so much amendment, perhaps a note that we include the relevant times of participation and or departure from that meeting to reflect what actually occurred.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Councillor Glacken. Back to Councillor Doxey. Did you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. We now have reports from community forums. We have none. Notice of motions, notice of rescission. Councillor Cameron.
Thanks,
We'll
Mr
just
Mayor.
wait for Councillor Doxey to leave the chamber.
Leave the biscuits.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. A lot has been said about this matter in the last 2 weeks, and I won't labour the point too much tonight. This is an attempt by me to correct what I think is an anomaly in the adopted motion in the meeting of 15th of December 2020. It does not seek in any way to delay the flying of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags at the monument. It does not seek to stop it happening. And I want to say again, as I've said at the last meeting, and as I've said privately and publicly, that I support the flying of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flag, that I've supported it being flown in the council for over 10 years. I supported, as did we all, the putting of flagpoles out the front of this building to fly it at the first opportunity. And I believe in time, it will be flown at the monument. And I think that'll be in the very near future. But council has an obligation, both by our own policies and morally, to consult with stakeholder groups before we do something. If we were going to put something at Mungabarina, which is one of several very special places to Aboriginal people in this district, we would of course consult with the Aboriginal community and the traditional owners of that site. I think there would be an outcry, and there should be an outcry if anyone would suggest that we should take action at a place like that and not consult. In the same way, our policies require us to consult with the RSL sub-branch. Now, it's a pity that there's people in this chamber, it appears, who want to short circuit that process and want to ride roughshod over that process. The day will come very soon when those flags will be flown, but we have an obligation as a council to consult with the RSL sub-branch before we go ahead with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Speaker against, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak against Councillor Cameron's notice of motion of rescission. I agree with his sentiments entirely. However, the motion itself is unnecessary. We will be allocating money in the budget, a line item that would enable the installation of the flagpoles, but it still would need to go to public display, to public comment. So as I noted in the action items, we'll put a line item in our budget, and on the 1st of May, this will be publicly exhibited, and everyone in this community will have another opportunity to give feedback about the use of other flags at the War Memorial. So I encourage those people who are passionate about this, and it's obvious from tonight that there are many, to make sure you put in a submission to council about this. We had something in the order of 70 submissions last time. Let's hear from all the people who are interested in this matter and give us your honest feedback when this item comes up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Just calling for a seconder. Councillor Cameron jumped in before we could get a seconder for the motion. Councillor Van der Meer, you happy to second it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And you wish to speak for it as well?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
So continue. Look, I understand Councillor Thurley's sentiments, but the main reason for the rescission motion, as Councillor Cameron indicated, was that we need to provide the RSL the opportunity to make submissions and make comment on this proposal. That won't necessarily happen if we go back to relying on a budget item, one line item of $30,000 in the budget to get people to comment on. So for that reason, I'm supporting this particular motion to just make sure that due process is followed. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Councillor Collin, you wish to speak against?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief because I've made my feelings on this particular matter well known. Firstly, in regard to the procedural issue, we've already received a submission from the RSL on this matter when we put the civic flag protocol out for comment. And I also echo Councillor Thurley's comments that by including this in the draft budget, there's plenty of opportunity for comment. I think it's very important that we indicate our preference to fly the flags at Monument Hill by including that line item in our draft budget. And I believe so particularly because we were privileged tonight to hear from Mr. Bobby Wybrow, who is a Wiradjuri person. I don't think the voices of Wiradjuri people are heard nearly enough in this chamber that is on Wiradjuri land. At the start of this meeting and all of our meetings, we pay respects to the traditional owners, and I'm going to pay my respects to the traditional owners tonight by voting against the motion as we've been asked to.
Thank you. There are no further speakers for or against. Councillor Cameron, do you wish to close debate?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. I've been involved with local government and state politics, unsuccessfully, of course, over the last 28 years. And I've seen a lot of unpleasant things happen, and I've seen a lot of people do some shady things in that 28 years. But I've never seen anybody, and I mean this totally from the heart and absolutely honestly, I've never seen anybody mislead people and treat people in the way that our local community has been treated, particularly our Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander community, who have suffered enough by people in this community who should know better, conflating and misleading what this motion tonight is about. This motion is not about stopping the flying of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander flags on the monument or in any other place. This motion only seeks to make sure that proper consultation is carried out before council goes ahead with that, the same as we would consult with any other, and are required to consult by our own unanimously adopted policy last week. If people want to pursue higher office, that is their prerogative and their right, whether it be for the Senate or to fill a casual vacancy in the Legislative Council. But to use the people of Albury in this fashion is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. And I have seen some terrible things done by a range of parties, including on occasion my own, but this takes the cake. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour of the rescission motion? Those against? The motion is lost. If we get Councillor Doxey back in the chamber, please. Come and get him. CM10, presentations and deputations. There are none. CM11, reports and minutes of committees and working parties. Minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 2nd of February. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 2nd February 2021.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Just briefly, clearly our Sustainability Advisory Committee does a lot of great work in this community, and it's wonderful to see follow-up by the city. I went to Albury Public School last week and Plastic Oceans were there running a little workshop with the kids to teach them about the types of plastic, and that was seed funded by Albury City, and a wonderful initiative. So thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 11.2, minutes of the Albury Aquatic Facilities Advisory Committee held on Wednesday, the 3rd of February. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that Council receives, notes and accepts the minutes, recommendations of the Albury Aquatic Facilities Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 3 February 21.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
There are no questions or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 11.3, minutes of the Les O'Brien Athletics Precinct Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 10th of February. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury.
Mr Mayor, on your behalf, I would like to move that Council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Les O'Brien Athletics Precinct Advisory Committee held on Wednesday, 10th February 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
On your behalf, happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, just to speak to that at all?
I don't wish to. Do you, Mr Mayor?
No, everything's going well down there. Okay. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to this? No? Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Minutes of the the Local Safety Traffic Committee held on Thursday, the 11th of February. Councillor King.
I'd like to move that Council receives the notes and minutes of the recommendations of the Local Traffic Committee held on Thursday, 11 February 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Questions, Councillor King. I'll take a couple of questions. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I haven't found the right reference because my iPad went down for a moment, but I'll try to remember. My question is with reference to an item raised in general business by Councillor King, and it was about the CCTV mobile CCT unit, and made reference to the fact that of the duration until the test could be undertaken, and the report coming back to council. And from memory, it was May 22. And I'd just like clarification from the staff on that, because my recollection is that we as council agreed to that program as council. And so I'm not sure why it's being raised at the Local Traffic Committee as not being a suitable timeline, having dealt with it at council. So if I could seek clarification on that.
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, that was discussed in the context of driver behaviour on our road system, etc. Councillor King then sought further information, which were provided through our service leader, Miss Crode. So we've provided the information on the timelines around the implementation of that facility.
Further follow-up, if I may. So is the timeline stays as it was presented and agreed? So there's no change?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. We're certainly trying to fast track it as quickly as possible. So the initial report that came to council gave some indicative timeframes. We're working to them. They're achievable, but if we can fast track it at any instant, we'll bring forward those as quickly as we can. It's around getting processes in place more than purchasing equipment.
Yep, no, all good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can respond if you like, Councillor Keynes. You're the chair.
Yeah, I was the chair. Look, the aim of those questions in regard to CCTV was certainly around hoon driving, but was an ideal forum where we had representatives from Transport from New South Wales, as well as police sergeants, as well as other members of the council, to see if this initiative and this of the council to bring this matter forward as quick as we can, because there's a number of councillors here who've raised issues in regards to road safety. We have a lot of committees in regards to road safety. It's a good initiative. It was good enough to be voted on. And my question was there a way that this good initiative that everyone voted on could actually be sped up and brought forward so we can address this scourge on the city?
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, question.
Just on the same matter, through you, Mr. Mayor, the minutes reflect that Councillor King advised that he has had further discussions with a number of other councillors and intends to request that this trial project be brought forward. So in which forum will that request be made?
Councillor King, did you have a response to that?
Can you just read that out again for me?
So the minutes say Councillor King advised that he has had further discussions with a number of other councillors and intends to request that this trial project be brought forward. So in which forum is it going to be requested that the trial be brought forward? In the local traffic committee or at the council?
I don't know. I'll continue my conversations with other councillors, and then I will potentially bring a motion forward or whatever I decide.
Okay. Question from Councillor Thurley.
Yes, it's a matter that I have already brought to the attention of Mr. Ferris, but at a public meeting at the Westside Community Forum the other day, two issues were raised. One was the traffic speeds down Jacaranda Street, and the other was the visibility of the pedestrian crossing in Pemberton Street. And my question is about how we go about looking at those two issues.
Mr. Ferris.
Through Mr. Mayor, they've been referred to our traffic team. We've got some counters and doing some investigation work as we speak, and we'll be able to bring something back through a future local traffic committee meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Question from Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in regards to Councillor Thurley's previous question, I've previously asked about the traffic lights, the pedestrian crossing on Pemberton Street, and wondering about sidelines. And it's been analysed and it's been shown to be okay. I have seen cars sail through red lights at that intersection. There's no obstruction to view of the traffic lights. I think it's just driver inattention. My question relates to to item number 2.4, and it's to the relevant member of staff, and it's regarding a Transport for New South Wales investigation of traffic light at controlled intersection in Albury. And Mr. Minahan, one of our glorious representatives from Transport for New South Wales, undertook to review these traffic lights within the next 10 days. And I'm just asking Mr. Ferris if he could appraise us of Mr. Minahan's attentions to these traffic signals 10
Mr.
days
Ferris.
from the meeting.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I'll need to take that on notice and see if he's been talking to our traffic team since that.
No, a follow-up. Mr. Minahan suggested that he would be on site, or one of his representatives would be on site, actually in person, all the way down from Wagga to Albury to have a look at these intersections. So he wasn't going to investigate them. He was going to put up a personal appearance.
Sure, Mr. Ferris, we ought to give Mr. Minhan a call to find out if he's been on site. Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Cameron, your green light's pressed.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to speak about the questions asked of Councillor King and say it's an excellent idea. You know, there's obviously some very community-loving, involved councillor that thought up the idea. And if you want to support that agenda, I hope you'll bring it back to this forum, and I'll certainly look forward to supporting you in every way to accelerate that program if it can be accelerated. It's good to see such good work being done on the Traffic Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Just one question, just a query, Mr. Ferris. Is it true the minutes reflect that Acting Sergeant Brady expressed concerns about vehicles exiting the Harris Farm Market car park, and you pointed out to him that it was because cars in the vision line were actually parked illegally?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So at an earlier local traffic committee meeting, we removed a park to provide some clear zone, some site clearance, albeit it is a very busy street and a very busy precinct at the moment with the opening of Harris Farm. On some of our inspections post-opening, there was cars parked in that no parking zone, which made it incredibly hard for anyone leaving the facility to have any sight of traffic heading along that area. So that's what.
Okay, so it was a past and present issue. Yep. Thank you. Councillor King, you moved the report. Do you wish to close debate? Well, there's been a lot of discussion about your debate. Did you wish to have any further? Thank you.
Yes, look, just in opening and closing, the local traffic committees getting quite exciting. There's a lot of things on the move, and I encourage any councillors to actually write in with anything that they do see. It's an excellent forum for those people in control of the local traffic, being Transport for New South Wales, police, local council representatives, and of course councillors and other guests sometimes who come along. So, you know, we go down to things like arrows on roads, to things like Harris Farm issues, and we had a lot of input in regards to the traffic around Harris Farm. Everyone noticed that there's a problem, and it's good to see that the council staff are really onto it and open to a lot of suggestions. I think we spoke about the council land on the south east corner in regards to overflow parking, and you know, that's something that we could probably take on board. But just certainly any councillors have any issues that they want, just drop us an email and we'll certainly raise it and push it to its finalisation as quick as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Minutes of Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 17th of February. Councillor Vandervan.
I'll move that council receives notes and accepts the minutes recommendation of the Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 17th of February 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, did you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, do you wish to speak to that? You have buttons to press. Okay, no worries. No further question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 11.6, the minutes of the Companion Animals Advisory Panel meeting held on Wednesday, the 7th of February, 2021. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stuchbury.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move this, that council receives notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Companion Animals Advisory Panel meeting held on Wednesday, the 7th of February, 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury, do you wish to speak to that?
I do not, Mr. Mayor. Do you?
Look, I might add that in the discussion, it was a very long meeting, actually. We had a lot of interesting discussions about everything from small dogs to big dogs and everything in between, and cats. But the important part about it was that there was discussion about planning and master planning of separate precincts for smaller dogs and larger dogs in our off-leash parks, because they're deemed to be seen as being vulnerable, which I can understand. So we're doing a bit of planning in that space, and I think it's encouraging that we're trying to cater for every potential influence that is occurring in those off-leash park areas. But a very productive committee, well attended, and it's a pleasure to chair them. So happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. We're up to documents for sealing, 12.1. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Clacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendations, the motion that council authorises its seal to be affixed to the document outlined below in the presence of two signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 and the council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure. A Albury City lease to Bivalo Proprietary Limited, James Sloan of Suite 1, 4th floor, 553 Keywell Street, Albury, commencing 1 July 2021 for 3 years with 3-year option. File number 1800. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckton, will you speak to that?
No, thank you.
There are no questions or discussion. I have to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Officers' reports for consideration. 13.1, the development application 10.20.38032.1, industrial warehouse associated office, amenities and car park at lot 5, number 41, Sarah's Drive, Thaguna. Councillor Gluckton.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendations. A motion that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.20238032.1 for an industrial development office, warehouse, amenities and car parking, stage 1 only, at proposed lot 5, number 41 Crescent Cirrus Drive, Thaguna, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included attachment 4 to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckton, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Simply to note that it is a development on the northern side of the airport precinct, as we all know from reading our documents, and that the development is really a warehouse and as such will be operated predominantly during the week. And there were a couple of things that the developer is being asked to undertake. That's in the draft determination. So those conditions I don't think are onerous, and I think they were a good assessment made by the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further question or debate. I'm happy to put the motion as division. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Gluckton and Councillor Vanderman. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we're up to 13.2, which is the development application 10.2020.37522.1, 36 lot Torrens title subdivision and vegetation removal of the Elm stage 8.1 and 8.2. Councillor Doxey. Thurley. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be moving something that's slightly different than what's on the board. So take a seat and
Yeah.
I move that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2020.37522.1 for a 36-lot residential subdivision and creation of a central reserve, including a stormwater retention system capable of being Sloan's froglet habitat, with associated tree removal on lot 700 in DP 1246049 Thaguna in 2 stages, stages 8.1 and 8.2 of the Elms estate, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 6 to this report, with the following additional conditions. A10, cat containment. This site is set amongst Thaguna's sensitive environmental lands. To reduce the potential conflict between domestic pets and protected, vulnerable and endangered native species in the area, cat containment measures are required under this clause for all properties in the development. No cat is permitted to roam freely outside of their owner's respective property. Suitable containment measures are to be implemented to contain domestic cats within each property, preventing cats escaping the private property of their respective owner. A restriction on the deposited plan by way of 88B instrument advising all future owners is required. A11, dedication of public reserve and lot 123, DP 1235853. The reserve, as shown on the approved plans in lot 123, proposed to be dedicated to council, shall be identified in the plan of subdivision lodged with the respective subdivision certificate application of the development. The subdivision certificate application is to be accompanied by evidence that all works in the reserve and lot 123 including any tree planting, shared path network, utilities and other amelioration works have been completed. Amelioration works include site assessment to determine appropriate locations for compensatory plantings, site assessment to identify areas of weed infestation, environmental weed removal to be undertaken as identified by site assessments, removal of all internal and external barbed wire fencing, appropriate vehicle exclusion barriers to be completed along Smiggins Drive, appropriate repairs to boundary fencing where required, ecological sensitive fencing only, a risk assessment of trees along the walking path alignment, engage a suitable qualified arborist AQF level 3 or higher to undertake a risk assessment of trees along the walking path. The engaged arborist is to submit a report that includes the following issues: identifying the arboricultural risks and provide the relevant tree work schedule and amelioration soil works around the impacted trees to improve their overall health and vigour. All tree remediation works are to be undertaken prior to the handover of the land. Council will require a monetary payment for the maintenance and or replacement of any elements of the public reserve. The payment amount is to be equivalent to the cost of maintenance for a 15-year period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Vanderman.
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to open debate?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. This development's been a long time coming, and there have been quite a few objections, mainly relating to traffic. But I note that since the original development was proposed, some changes have been made which would improve traffic flow, and not all traffic will be pushed into Zyle Circuit as would have been in the original, I think. So it's always been zoned ready for this development, and with the reserve and the other changes that have been made, I think we've achieved a better outcome than was originally put to us. So while there are some concerns by the local people about traffic, and that will no doubt be a nuisance during construction and development of the subdivision, I think overall it will be a reasonably good development.
Thank you. I have a speaker against, Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In speaking against, I firstly wanted to say that if consent is granted this evening, I do support the additional conditions that have been added by Councillor Thurley. I think they're very appropriate for this quite sensitive site. I'll be voting against the DA as it stands for 3 reasons, and those are all reasons that were raised in the report, either by members of the public who raised objections or by our own staff. The first one is the lack of playground in this development. The public open space for this future community is a transgrid easement, and I understand that really can't be meaningfully enhanced for recreation because of the conditions of the easement. The nearest playground to this development is 750 metres away, and if I recall previous discussions we've had in the lead up to our public open space strategy, I understand local parks should ideally be within half a K of communities. So I think this future community is going to miss out through the lack of a local playground. My second concern, Albury City's biodiversity certification means that residential land can be cleared from a biodiversity perspective, but that doesn't exempt the site from the Commonwealth EPBC Act. And we know that the trees being cleared on this site are habitat for the recently listed as critically endangered Regent honeyeater. And in reading the report, both our Albury City staff and the New South Wales DPIE staff raised concerns about the methodology that was used for the assessment of the Regent honeyeater habitat. Specifically, they were concerned at the use of a tree inventory rather than a species survey. And I think given that the Regent honeyeater has declined in numbers by 80% over the last couple of generations, we need to make sure we get this right. And it's really concerning to me to see state government staff and Albury City staff in agreement that the correct methodology wasn't used. Finally, and most importantly, I oppose this DA because of the clear felling of 281 trees that are greater than 4.5 metres tall. As I've just said, we know that our biodiversity certification means that this can be done from a biodiversity perspective on this land, which has been zoned residential. But as several of the submitters have pointed out, trees have enormous benefits beyond just habitat for species, whether that's cooling and microclimate regulation to soil stability. And I'm really disappointed to see persistent development applications that don't attempt to integrate any vegetation into the development in preference of clear felling the entire site. I'm really hopeful that this is something we can address really proactively in our upcoming review of the DCP Part 5, which I understand the Sustainability Advisory Committee will be looking at soon. But until that time comes, I'm going to continue to oppose developments that are clear felling such a significant portion of land. Noting that the nearby E3 zone land is going to be dedicated to council, which I think is really fantastic. That land was always zoned for environmental conservation, and I don't think that that makes up for the loss of clear felling these trees that are Regent Honeyeater habitat. Thanks.
Thank you. There are no further questions or speakers for or against. Councillor Thurley, you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion as a division. All those in favour? Councillor Stashbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Blacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. Those against? Councillor Con. The motion is carried. Thank you. The next item, the draft World War II Memorial Bowl Master Plan. Councillor Doxey is leaving the chamber. Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendations motion of the council, A, receives and endorses the draft World War II Memorial Bowl Master Plan. B, places the draft World War II Memorial Bowl Master Plan on public exhibition for a minimum of 28 days. And C, if no submissions are received through the public exhibition process, that the draft World War II Memorial Bowl Master Plan be adopted as the final version.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Second that.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, Mr Mayor, but just a quick question. If I can first, through you.
Yep, I've got a question from Councillor Glackendoo. So you start with yours?
Yeah, I want to understand the idea of a bowl to me has always been for musical events. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. I just want to get some idea of how that can still happen with the master plan as it stands, with all of the extra elements that have been introduced into the actual bowl area, not so much in the surrounding area, but in the actual bowl area. I want to just try and understand that.
Okay. Away we go.
Thanks very much for the question, and through you, Mr Mayor. The ability to retain a musical or small event performance would still be able to occur in the area. You'll recall from the plan there that there's a grassy area that's been left in front of the immediate stage area to the bowl. It was felt in the past there's been very few is held in that location, and so it was felt to better activate the area for a whole range of other reasons. That being said, there's greater spaces that I suppose promoting longer stays for performance type activities, such as at the Botanic Gardens, music in the gardens, and those sorts of events. So the Memorial Bowl has never been designed as a longer term stay, and it doesn't have the facilities like toilets to support events such as musical performances, and hence we've retained a small space, I guess, that it can hold a small event, but certainly long term events are better placed at alternative venues such as Botanic Gardens, where we hold music in the gardens.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark, just to ask a question before Councillor Vanderman opens debate.
Yes, if I may. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, I note, I'm unable to find on the plans any suggestion of flagpoles, and I'm wondering if it might be possible for us to have a suggestion of putting some flagpoles near item number 10 or 11, where there's going to be car parking, and then a couple of flagpoles on the other side on the side of the Indigenous garden, so that we could have the Aboriginal or consideration for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags at the in the Aboriginal part, and then on the other side we could have another couple of flags, so that we could have two flags as we're going up. Because in essence, if people drive, many of them drive up through that area and then up to the monument. Not everyone, but that's one of the routes that people often take if they're coming in from the town. So I was wondering if we could simply consider that as part of the ongoing works. And I don't expect an answer tonight. It is simply, could staff look at that as a possibility? Because at some stage, I believe that we will want to do some work on the Indigenous garden there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. Councillor Vandervan, do you wish to open debate on the item? Thanks.
Yeah, well, obviously, having been a resident of Albury for some 35 years and visited the War Memorial on numerous occasions, it's always, the question always popped up when I drove past that site and saying, what's ever going to happen to this? And it's great now that we do have a way forward in terms of what this could look like, going forward. So I'm really happy to see this master plan, and obviously there's already funding for the detailed design and construct in the next couple of years. So I look forward to the eventual outcome of this as another wonderful public space for the citizens of Albury and its visitors.
Thank you. No speakers against. Councillor Gluckin speaking for.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for the opportunity. I think it's a great use of the space so that we can actually use the space. And I note that many of the people who have already fed back into the works to date, or the plans to date, indicate that they often go there for activity and for play. And I think the introduction of the flying fox there is absolutely fantastic. I'm conscious of the fact that many people walk up to the monument and therefore go past here, and that's one of the reasons why I wondered if we could look at having some flags there to signify the start, and people walking up to the monument would walk past those flags as well. I think it is important that we do retain the bowl for what it was originally envisaged to be used as, but enhancing that use with these other facilities is very good. And I look forward to receiving the feedback from the community, but also probably in the medium to longer term, opportunities of adding additional facilities such as the toilets and other facilities for people to be able to utilise that space in a more modern way, including the electricity, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Costello, is there any the water on site at that location? Are we thinking about putting in watering systems and public water?
Thanks very much for the question, Mr. Mayor. There is water on site there at the moment, and there'll be a drinking fountain installed as well, and power is certainly nearby as well. So both those services are nearby. Power's not connected immediately at the moment, but there's certainly access to both on site.
So they'll be able to put water reticulation on this site? Because I know it does get very dry during droughts.
At the moment, there's not irrigation planned for the area, but there's certainly water to the site. So if council chose to further enhance the site through irrigation, there would be an ability to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Debate on this item.
Yeah, just briefly following up on your point, I would have thought that having the ability to do some irrigation up there would be something that we do in the planning stage. So maybe make a note of that as my submission into the into the project. But apart from that, yeah, no, I commend this master plan to fellow councillors.
Thank you. Okay, I suppose we need division, so I'll put the motion as a division. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Cameron, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Blacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. I'll get Grant. Thank you, councillors. Officers' report for noting we're 14.1 2 Cities 1 Community Action Plan update. Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to move the council receives and notes the 2 Cities 1 Community Action Plan December 2020 update.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
Only briefly, I think that we need to hold the course here in terms of our 2 Cities 1 Community initiative, especially with the attacks that are being made on the health service, which is the bastion of our 2 Cities 1 Community ideology, if you like. So from my perspective, I just think that we need to continue to support the 2 Cities 1 Community initiative and make sure that the projects are followed through, especially in terms of the deal that the regional deal that's on the table at the moment. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Appears to be no further questions or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Delegates' reports for noting. 15.1 Murray-Darling Association Delegates' Report. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the council receives and notes the Murray-Darling Association Delegates Report for tabling at council February 2021.
Councillor Cameron.
Seconded.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Just to highlight that the annual conference will be held in Wentworth in May, and that will include a tour of Malindi Lakes, which is a very hot topic in the basin at the moment. Well, very dry topic, I would have to say. And the other issue, of course, is there's been a lot of work being done around the Barmer Choke and delivery risk of getting water down to permanent planning. So there is some detail in the report and some links to get further information.
Thank you. No questions. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Urgent business. Councillor Cameron, you raised one. Did you still wish to ask a question?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm very concerned. I'm sure all of us are, and Councillor Vanderman just referenced it, about media reports such as they can be about what's going on with the Albury-Wodonga Health Service. We understand that there's some sort of review going on. I think it's appropriate. I mean, that health service, like all of them, has a community appointed, or a board which is appointed from this community with the purpose of representing community members and conveying information to the community. Unfortunately, at the moment, they appear to be rolling up the shutters and not telling us what's going on. I'd like to propose that the Mayor write to the Health Service and ask what is their review that's currently in place and what is the ambit of that review, and as far as can be known, what are the factors being considered in that review. I think we're entitled, not just as a council, but as a city and a community, to know what's going on with our health service, and I think it's disappointing that the board has thrown up the shutters in this fashion.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, your light's on. Did you wish to second that?
Yes, I will second the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to ask a question?
Yes, simply who would that letter be copied to? Because I think it's important to copy that to an appropriate group.
Thank you for that suggestion. I think it should be copied to both the federal and state members and to the federal and state health ministers in both New South Wales and Victoria. Thank you for that suggestion. It's a very good suggestion.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Cameron. So I'm happy to accept that motion. It's been moved and seconded. Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thanks, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Vanderman, you had one as well.
Yes, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to move the council staff provide some words around the issue that's just been announced by the New South Wales government. They're stopping Zoom meetings for council as of the 24th of March. I'm very dismayed at this high-handed action by the New South Wales government in terms of disenfranchising people in the future from participating in council and providing their expertise and their thoughts into what's good for the community going forward. I think that there needs to be some, if you like, some guidelines around this in terms of if it is important to still have that the personal attendance at council meetings, but if for some reason you're prevented from being here, you still have the opportunity to attend via Zoom. And I think we've found that there's been no detrimental impact to council's decision making over the last 12 months in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that moving forward, the technology needs to be embraced because I believe that it provides a certain comfort and assurance to people that they can continue planning. We're in a part-time environment here. It's not as if we're Queensland councillors, they're all full-time. We're in a part-time environment here, and sometimes circumstances, as Councillor Cameron well knows, prevent you from actually physically being here, but you still then have the option to Zoom in and be part of that decision-making process. So I'd like to move that council staff come back to us at our next meeting or with some words around sending a letter to the council, to the New South Wales government and copy to the local member, or maybe send it in through him to express our dismay at the fact that they're unilaterally cutting off the ability to have attendance at council meetings via Zoom as of the 24th of March.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, but can I perhaps suggest some words to sharpen it up, because 24th of May is not far. 24th of March is not far away. That the General Manager write to the Premier and the Minister for Local Government expressing her opposition to the immediate cessation of the option to use Zoom to attend council meetings and seek guidelines around such use.
I'm happy to accept that.
Happy to accept?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Okay. No worries. So that's the motion that's been offered, moved and seconded by Councillor Vandervan and Councillor Thurley. Councillor Gleichen, you wish to speak for this motion?
Indeed, and to highlight the fact that it's been extremely beneficial for us as a council, and no doubt it would be beneficial for city councils as well. But really, I wish to highlight that for rural and regional councils in particular, it provides a fantastic opportunity because some of those councillors have to travel some distance to be able to attend these meetings. Some of them are during the day, others are at night. It would enable for most of us who are in a part-time role to better be able to participate. And I think we need to stress that it would be of benefit not just to our own council, but to many councils within New South Wales. And there are a myriad of circumstances that would enable that people would not otherwise be able to participate in a council meeting, including increasing participation by otherwise underrepresented members of our community, because they would be able to Zoom in, for example, single parents. Lots of different people would be able to continue working away, and the Zoom enables that functionality. So I'm really keen for us to stress the benefit that it would provide to broadening that base of councillors in the future, as well as supporting existing councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got the words down, Pat. It's recorded in the minutes, so we'll endeavour to get that letter off to the minister and the premier. So I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Okay. Now we've got a confidential item. If I get someone to move, please, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the council will now move into confidential to discuss item CM 17.1, as this is a confidential item exclusive of press or public on the grounds the matters relate to. The matters and information are the following. C, information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business. And D, commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it or confer a commercial advantage on a competitor of the council. Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A2C, oh my God, D1 and D2.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I'd like to second that and foreshadow that I'm going to the bathroom.
Thank you. So I'll just ask, are there any submissions to be made from the floor of council in relation to why we shouldn't be going into confidential on this matter? There does not appear to be any, so we'll just go into confidential, but I'll pause the proceedings until you attend to your urgent matter, Councillor Cameron. Thank you.